When it's really bad, they actually put a balloon inside of there, blow this up, and then put a type of surgical cement back into the bone to try to actually re-engage that normal height of the vertebral body. Hey everyone, Dr. Todd from Gonstead Spine Wellness. In this video, we're going to talk about some of the things that are fun to do in the summer, but can cause extreme spine injury. This might be looking at me as like a Debbie Downer, but we're going to talk about trampolines. So join me on this video. Watch this as a concerned parent, as a chiropractor, whomever's watching this video. Listen to what I have to tell you. This is why I'm not letting our kiddo have a trampoline. Before we get started, let me just say this. We serve two different audiences. One is patients that want to learn about natural health and healing, or just the community in general. And the second audience is chiropractors. We teach chiropractors how to integrate their practice with corrective exercise and functional movement, which is a key component in what we do to get such amazing results. Check out the links below. First one you'll see for patient, second one here is for chiropractors. Now let's talk about this. I have a spine model in front of me. I will just refresh a couple basics that we cover in a lot of our videos, and I'll put a link up above for something that's relevant to this that'll give you a little bit of a background in just normal spine and curves and hip hinging and all that sort of thing, which we're gonna talk about. So this is a side view of the spine. You're supposed to have certain curves. I didn't really make this as perfect as we'd like to show it, but let me just tell you, forward curve in the neck, backward curve in the mid back, forward curve in the low back. And on this view, mine is not showing this, but it should be totally straight, or as straight as possible. That is the healthiest position for the spine so that it can endure life's activities, life's traumas, things that we throw at it, but to a certain extent. Meaning if you introduce a big enough trauma, even to a nice, sound, and healthy, mechanically aligned spine, that trauma is going to do damage no matter how good of shape you're in to begin with. So there is an ideal shape. You want curves. You want it to be straight on this view. But let's talk about what happens when you have an extreme compressive force or what's called a forward flexion force. Now this is in reference to like a trampoline type of injury, but let me just talk about something that a lot of us have gone through when we were little kids growing up. So if you're an adult watching this right now, you probably go back and say, oh yeah, I've done that before. Have you ever jumped off your roof of your house, landed really hard, and maybe it hurt a little bit, maybe it knocked the wind out of you, or maybe it just felt like a very abrupt, hard contact with the earth? You ever had that happen? I did that before. If my parents are watching this, sorry mom and dad, but I jumped off the roof as a kid, thought it was fun, maybe trying to sneak out at night. Okay, kids, don't get any ideas on that. But when you do that, it causes a forward flexion of the spine. So the spine flexes down like this. If that force is within the confines of what the body can support, then the bone and the disc and all the connective tissue and the musculature can absorb that without any injury left behind. But that's a very fine line, because if there's just too much flexion, just a little too much force, not enough engagement, not enough shock absorption in your legs, and it happens through your spine, then that force actually gets absorbed into the front part of these vertebral bodies. So the anatomy of the spine, you have a bone, disc, bone, nerve in between, spinal cord runs down the middle. This is the front, this is the back, and you should have a curve in your spine going this way, but it should be about a mid 40-degree curve, and it should be flatter down low, and then a little more curved up above, but not too much. That's the normal ideal spine model. If you have a forward flexion injury, what happens is now you're inducing too much forward bend into the spine abruptly, and the vertebra in the front is what's going to absorb all the impact. That can crush the bone and cause what's called a compression fracture. So compression fracture, now the vertebra on x-ray is not going to look nice and parallel, but it's going to be decreased in height in the front compared to the back, and it's going to look different than the segments above or below. And sometimes you can have multiple compression fractures from that type of forward flexion injury. So why is that a problem? Because you're permanently deforming the shape of the bone. It's going to change the posture indefinitely. Now, instead of having the capacity to fix a slouched forward posture like we see in our clinic all the time, this is the most common thing that we're fixing, people texting and sitting all day long. Now we're limited on how much we can fix that, because the shape of the bone is not going to allow a normal type of upright spine, because the bone's changed. So now we can only fix it as much as the bone will allow. So only to a certain limit. Now, also, you can have a bad compression fracture, and that can cause neurological problems. It can cause severe impingement. It can cause the disc to herniate and bulge backwards. It can cause fragments of the bone to break off and go into the spinal canal, which is the space back here where there's a spinal cord. So it's a very significant injury. In the medical world, when it's really bad, they actually put a balloon inside of there, blow this up, and then put a type of surgical cement back into the bone to try to actually re-engage that normal height of the vertebral body. So it's a very significant life-altering trauma that can happen from jumping off of a roof, but also very easily jumping on a trampoline. You know, if you jump on a trampoline, you come down the wrong way, and you've probably felt this before, and it kind of jars your spine. So imagine doing that just the wrong way, just at the wrong angle. That's all it takes, and it can create a compression fracture. Our spine is not meant, our body is not meant to jump on a surface that has that much spring and that much uncertainty of when that point of impact is going to happen. Especially when someone else double bounces you, you know, where someone else hits it and then it launches you up. And as a child, although children do have more resilience in that their bones are not fully calcified, much of their bone is still cartilaginous or made up of cartilage, that gives them a little bit more freedom or a little bit more grace to have injuries and not have significant problems like this. But you never know. It can go a little further at the wrong time. You hear about these stories of kids getting paralyzed, all kinds of stuff. And so now if you're watching this and you're thinking, hey, kids should be kids and you can't put them inside of a plastic bubble all day long or they'll never do anything, I totally agree with that. But on the same note, there's certain things that I feel like the risk to reward benefit is just not there. So things like trampolines, not a fan of for the compression fraction issue and also the neck stuff, which I'll talk about in a second. Things like rock jumping, like jumping off of rocks into water and not knowing how shallow or deep the rocks are, possibly hitting the rocks on the way down. Throughout high school, I remember there was some spots out in California where I grew up. There was kids every year that would either get killed or get paralyzed. It's just not worth it. So I am a risk taker. I like to do adrenaline type of activities. I do, but I do them within reason. And there's certain things I don't want to do because I just don't think the risk to reward ratio is really there. So that's what I would say. Trampoline, don't do it. Get something else for your kids. If you have a trampoline right now, set some really firm ground rules as far as, you know, not having two people on there at the same time because that double bouncing thing can be a problem. Make sure it doesn't bottom out. Make sure they're not going to fall off the trampoline onto the ground. They have these little cages around them now. There's still lots of opportunity to hurt the mid-back, but I haven't even talked about the neck yet. So the neck is probably one of the most commonly injured areas on a trampoline. So I started with a lesser common area. Now, this case, flipping and that sort of thing, landing the wrong way and flexing the head, forced flexion down. Ugh. That stretches ligaments, can cause what's called a spinal ligament injury. We talk about that in other videos. I'll link one up above where we go through a lot of different neck curve analysis. That's a good one to talk about spinal ligament injuries. That can happen from trampolines. And again, I'm not trying to be this doomsday person on trampolines, but I've seen so many of these in practice over the years. You know, I've practiced since 2003, seen hundreds of these. See them in adults, see them in kids. I had a patient back in New Mexico that had a major compression fracture here. He was about 40 years old, jumped off of a brick wall onto a trampoline that his kids had, bottomed it out, hurt himself significantly. So I know these are freak injuries that I'm giving you an example of, but these other ones are more common than you think. The neck, forced flexion, even worse, forced extension, extending backwards. So it's just introducing this thing that's above and beyond and outside your control. It's hard for your body to predict and guard properly because there's so much uncertainty, unpredictability when you're on a trampoline because of just bouncing and flipping and whatnot. So at the end of the day, the verdict is in. Dr. Todd, not a fan of trampolines. Okay, don't shoot the messenger. It's just, I've seen too many injuries. I don't think it's worth it. Find other things for your kids to do. Like, I don't know. I think like mixed martial arts is safer than this. Put them in jiu-jitsu. Get them into other non-crazy contact sports at a young age. Don't go into tackle football either at a young age or maybe ever. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that. So there's certain things that I just feel like they might be fun at the time, but it sets you up for a lifetime of problems. And there's evidence that we as chiropractors find in the spine that we can link back to that one incident, that one instance when you thought you were having a fun time and then it changed things forever. Now, my wife behind the camera, she's the opposite of me. She actually grew up, didn't really take any risk with anything. And I joke with her and say she's afraid of her own shadow. You don't have to go to that extreme. She's shaking her head right now, but the camera's on a gimbal, so you can't see the camera moving. So you don't have to go to that extreme, but it's just somewhere in the middle. And I think trampolines are more on the side of something I would just cut out. All right. That's it. Dr. Todd from Gonstead Spine Wellness. Leave a comment below. Let us know what you think. Let us know if you've had a trampoline injury. I'm just curious when it comes to the health of you and your family. Results matter most.